meeting to discuss the 2023 budget, and tonight's on the agenda is going to be Public Works and Engineering. And all alders are present except Tom Rayom, who's sick this evening, excused, and Ryan Austin is on Zoom. Other than that, and we'll start with Mr. Bowler.
All right. So for the most part, in your budget packet that Tim handed out, our department starts on, well, truly it starts on page 94, but then we kind of go backwards to page 92. So I'll start on 94 just to go through our staffing levels, and then I'll probably go back to 92 just to keep myself in order, if that's okay. So one thing before I start on this, one of the exercises that Tim and I have done, which in some part reflects about 105,000 of our budget increase, is we have not adjusted our rental rates on our equipment since 2019, and so that was one of the exercises that we did. One of the things is our department's budget is somewhat complex because we have a bunch of different maintenance activities that everything is spread out over. And so, like I say, I'll probably keep saying over and over that one of the increases in this budget is, you know, our equipment rental went up or whatever. So like I say, over all of our budget items, the increase was 105,822 for our equipment rental through all of the budgets. Okay. So then on to page 94 then. Up in the top there, there has been no changes to our staffing levels. In 2021, we went from myself and one street supervisor to myself and two supervisors, but that was not an additional person. We simply took that person out of the work group, and so otherwise our budget levels have stayed the same. So now I'm gonna go back to page 92 then. One of the funding sources for our activities is the stormwater utility, and that accounts for a couple of our items that we do. First item is street sweeping. Again, like I said before, you're going to see the increase of $19,000 and some odd cents for our equipment rental from 2022 to 2023. And then something new in 2022 is we used to have an agreement where we would take our street sweepings to the landfill that was be used for daily cover, and then they would take like asphalt chunks from us to build roads in their in the landfill. And that was kind of on a gentleman's agreement with the new ownership of Waste Management instead of Veolia, I guess it was. We've chosen to identify those as, you know, changing for dollar type thing or whatever. So that's why in 2022 we had that $59,000 increase of contract payments. Now that we're 1 year into it, we feel like we should be able to have a cost savings there because we're not generating as much street sweepings as we have thought we were going to originally. So then the next item then is our storm sewer maintenance. There, like I say, the increase is to the equipment, and then the material prices are simply that, you know, all of the cast materials are up about 150 to 200%, And so that's just reflecting in there for that cost. And again, if at any point, please stop me, because I'm just gonna keep rolling, so. So like I said there, under storm sewer maintenance, that's catch basin repairs, catch basin rebuilds. You know, we get into some of the older parts of town, those are all still built out of brick catch basins instead of precast. So we do a completely rebuild on that. And then also the Diggers Hotline, that's budgeting engineering staff, but that's just one thing that I get from Joe to put in there. One of the things that we've been working on over the last 3 years, we're still not 100% there, is trying to do some more proactive maintenance instead of reactive maintenance. And so we're probably 2 or 3 years into it with the wastewater treatment plant. Every year they go through and clean 300 to 400 catch basins. And when they're doing that now, instead of how we used to in the past, we didn't do anything with that. But now we're actually going through and inspecting them and doing maintenance on them once we see it, rather than waiting for a hole to fill or something, or show up in front of a catch basin. And so that, you know, once we get 100% on board with that, that's gonna obviously save us, because it's gonna be a $300 to $400 repair instead of a couple $1,000 repair, you know, so. Like I say, we're getting there, but we're not quite there yet, so. And so those are really the two items. The other piece, and I don't know, Joe, if you want to touch base with this since we're in it, the stormwater administration.
Sure, I could jump in there quick and run through that portion from our perspective. So the stormwater utility is comprised of both maintenance type activities that Paul oversees, and then the administration of the utility itself with updating accounts, and then also our permit from the DNR for the city is covered by the engineering department. And so for the stormwater utility administration component, it's budgeted at about $85,000 for 2023. That's up 14.7% from 2022. The most notable items for the increase are largely related to our MS4 permit with the DNR. That's essentially just our stormwater permit to discharge stormwater into the Wisconsin River. And it pertains to the total maximum daily load, which is a phosphorus limitation on stormwater discharges related to a study that the DNR had done along the entire Wisconsin River watershed. So there's some costs in there for updating, mapping, and creating an implementation plan in order to reach the requirements of that additional, I guess, permit requirement. And then also to apply for an urban non-point source grant to help fund some of the implementation plan once it's completed.
Okay, back to page 94 then.
Joe, you know, maybe this would be appropriate time to touch on the 1 Mile Creek dredging project and update the status of that.
Sure. So the 1 Mile Creek project, it's currently still trying to be permitted through the Wisconsin DNR. There's two primary permits that are needed for that project. One is for the structure of the dams. There's two dams within that impoundment area between Lincoln Street and 2 Mile Avenue. And the other permit is for dredging activities. And so both of those have, I guess, have been a challenge for the DNR to respond to. And so, at least at this time, we're going to forego budgeting it for this construction season until such time that it is permitted. Then we could bring it back to either at a future budget cycle, or if it doesn't fall within a budget cycle, if it's midway through the budget year, we could always bring it back to the council at that time. But if anybody has questions as to what that project is, I could certainly go into more detail on that.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to bring it up because I know it's one of these projects that's been proposed in past budgets, and, you know, it's just one of the things with the hang-up with the getting permitted, but just want the council to be on note that we do have funds set aside for this in the stormwater utility, so when this project comes to fruition, that, you know, we have some reserves to fund the project.
Go over, just for the public, the historical information on the maintenance, big difference between 20 and 21
For which one, I'm sorry?
across the board, going from 247 to 471.
Which sheet are you on?
On page 92, sorry.
Is that the stormwater?
Yeah.
That would be the 8th Street culvert rehabilitation.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to put public.
Oh, so you're saying in 2022, 21, when there was 164 and some change there?
Yeah, and all the other numbers.
Sure. Yeah, so just as Tim had said, you know, the actuals for 2019 for our storm sewer maintenance was 37,000 and some change. 2020 was 29,220, and then in 2021 we had the culvert pipe that goes underneath 8th Street. I believe it's the 1 Mile Creek crossing. There was a failure that we found doing because actually the road section had failed in 2020, and so there was a project that was put together. There really wasn't anyone that bid the project, or actually there was, but it was like 4 times the estimated cost. So our construction crew did that work, open cut it and did that work, so that shows the material costs. Again, like I say, through the COVID process and everything like that, I hate to use that as the excuse, but that's what it is, you know, the material pricing has started to climb, probably some also, a lot of the storm sewer maintenance is cast iron, and so there isn't, I believe, as much imports coming in from China as what it used to be, and so that price is starting to climb that way. You know, we're kind of stuck using one company in Wisconsin that makes our cast, but like I said, that's where our increase is so much on the 2023 piece of it, from 68 to 79. Good, Dean? Okay.
Thank you.
All right, page 94 then starts to cover the majority of our maintenance activities then. Again, that's our staffing levels consistent through 2018. Street administration, you'll see obviously originally the Public Works Director was budgeted partially through this section. There's an increase in the vehicles because we had to add that additional supervisor's vehicle through the annual rental. Telephone and networking, we did a remodel in the city garage 2 years ago, and so then when we did that increased the amount of phones, and then also the amount of we're getting more and more iPads that we're using for mapping our work locations and things like that. So you have the monthly, because we have cellular on those, so you have the monthly charges for those. And then with the new supervisors, we're sending them to the University of Wisconsin has a very good program for like managing snow and ice and asphalt maintenance and things like that they've been going through to bring back different ideas. I went to the stuff probably 12 years ago, 14 years ago. Very good courses. Next page then, 95, street department training. there's an increase there just to reflect the possibility of having to send 2 new employees for the CDL training. And then also just, you know, our staff is newer. So doing a little bit more in the off-season with training for them, and then also sending our shop, our mechanics to some more things to get updated with the computer technology and everything like that. Also, one of the things that are in here is I put in a request to raise our shoe and boot allowance. Currently, our staff members get $175, and then our the managers get $100, and so requesting a $50 increase. To my understanding, that's what was done with some of the other work groups, so just doing a request to kind of match them. I may be wrong in that, but it's just hearsay, I guess. So, so that's in there. There also, last year we started it, a $500 tool allowance for our mechanics, and that is still in here also for those 5 members of the work group. Street repair and maintenance, this is one of the areas that, you know, there is some 12% increase, some pretty substantial increase. Most of that, though, is again through the equipment rental, and then broken out between materials and concrete or contract payments. Again, most everything we do has some sort of oil product that's associated with it, so that's the cost increases simply reflect that. So our chip sealing, you have the oil for chip sealing has gone up 45 cents in 2 years, so that represents $32,000 increase. The material itself has gone up $1.30, so that represents $5,000. Our mill and overlay, what we did this year for $100,000 would cost us $132,000. You know, so it's the price in the asphalt, and then also the milling companies having to deal with fuel with their, so that represents that, sorry, $28,000. We did have to add, or I have a project in here that every year the Wisconsin DOT hires a consultant to come and inspect our salt shed and where we store our salt sand through the winter months. And that pad was probably built in the 40s or 50s, and it has a lot of holes in it and things like that. So we've gone through and smeared asphalt that's left over from when we're patching for the day, but at some point we need to address that. In that project, I guess I'm not sure what you guys all have, if you have what we requested for ARPA funds or whatever, but that project has, I believe it's $25,000 in material, and then, yep, sorry, here it is. So that area there to do it the right way would require $5,000 in our labor and equipment rental, and then $30,000 in materials and contract payments. Like I said, that's part of that $100,000 increase. And then the other increase is simply $10,000 for the asphalt that or increase from the asphalt that we purchased from Wood County and or American Asphalt that would do our patches for us. Any questions there? Okay. Oops, sorry.
You mentioned that on these contract payments that they've gone up over, well, it's quite a bit, 50% or so. I just wanted to, and you might have said it and I might have missed it, but how did they go up so much? And is that something that those contract payments are to contractors outside of the city?
So some of that is just me, getting better at doing the budget. And so some of it originally was hidden, isn't the right word, but put into material costs. So, let me get stuff in front of me here, I'm sorry. So, gotta go backwards, I'm sorry. So as you'll see, the materials, we have a decrease is in $18,000. And so before, I had some of these contract payments were under the material purchases. So for instance, when we buy oil from HD Miggs, they charge us $2.35 a gallon, and then they come and deliver it for, or they distribute it for us for 33 cents a gallon. And when I did the budgets initially, I always had that as one lump sum as $2.60 cents. And so, just trying to keep a better track of that, I separated out the distribution because that is, in my opinion, a contractor that's doing work for us when he's spraying the oil. So some of that, majority of it, yes, is all contracted work that's being done. So, American Asphalt coming in here, originally I would have that asphalt budgeted under the materials, and now I just have it their lump sum because they don't separate out the placement versus the materials.
Okay, and these contracted payments are all for work that the city can't do because it doesn't have the equipment or for
Correct.
whatever other reason? All
Correct.
right,
Yep.
thank you.
Paul, does some of that increase in the contract payments have to do with the mill and overlay?
Yes.
We're undertaking that's funded by the transportation utility fee of $150,000, so that explains some of that increase in the contract payments?
No.
Nope.
No, so it's well, I guess it was my understanding that the intention is that we were going to keep the same budget or keep the same square footage of the mill and overlay in the budget like I have done. And then the intention is that we were going to have, I think it was 150,000 coming out of the transportation utility. So what I did is I've budgeted the last 3 years 7,600 square yards of mill and overlay, which, like I said, normally equated to about $100,000. Now, with our current pricing, that equals $132,000 to do that. So if I did that in error, we could simply take $32,000 off of that then and take that out of the mill and overlay, or sorry, the transportation utility. But I was under the understanding that we were gonna try to keep the same level in the mill and overlay as far as the work that we did, and then virtually double that using the street utility. But I could have made an error there. So if that's the case, we would be at $260,000 to do the same. I guess it'd be 15,200 square yards. But like I said, there's an increase to that. Part of the increase is $32,000 because that's what it would cost to do what I did this year, next year. Just because of the increase in materials and the contracted rate with the contractor coming into mill.
So we're doing more mill and overlay this year, next year? Or, so,
We're doing more, but that's just what we're not doing more through this budget. We're doing the same amount, but it's costing us more because of the increase in
Right.
pricing.
so,
But we're going to be gaining the 150,000, which would allow us to do more through the transportation utility.
So in essence, you're paying for some of it out of the budget and the balance out of the transportation utility. So overall, we would be doing more mill and overlay.
I think
Or-
that was what the intention of the transportation
Right.
utility, right?
Yeah, that's, yeah. And so I'm just getting confused when as you're explaining is that we will be ultimately, if we do a mile of mill and overlay, we'll do 2 miles of mill and overlay because, well, minus the increase in cost for asphalt, but in essence, we'll be doing a greater distance of mill and overlay with the combination of budget and transportation utility?
So for the last 2 years, we budgeted 7,600 square yards of mill and overlay.
Okay.
This year, it cost $100,000 to do 7,600 square yards.
Okay.
Next year, in theory, because who knows, everything could come back to normal. Next year, I'm projecting that it's gonna cost $132,000 to do the same 7,600 that it cost $100,000 to do this year.
Correct. So
And
what are you
then-
doing with the extra mill and overlay money set aside in the transportation utility budget?
Then we would do that as well. There,
Oh, okay,
that's not reflected in this budget
okay.
because I wasn't,
No,
I
and
didn't
that-
do anything with that 150,000 that may be available in the transportation utility.
Okay. Yeah, because we should, if there's money there to do it, we should be doing it.
Right, yeah, so I have
That
not
was the
budgeted anything using those funds at all.
Okay. Okay.
So like I say, if it's the desire, we could easily cut $32,000 out of this to use from the transportation utility, plus then, another 132,000, or we'd have to be short of that because we're only projecting 150,000.
So what you should do is, I would think, is you're budgeting $75,000 for mill and overlay. No matter what the cost is, you have budgeted how much for mill and overlay?
The last 2 years was $100,000.
So we have $100,000, add $150,000 to it, you get $250,000 to figure out how to do that amount of distance in mill and overlay.
We could do that, yes.
I think
that's-
that's probably the intent of what we're set up the mill and overlay, 150,000 in the transportation utility was to use that for an additional mill and overlay. So in essence, I would think that means $250,000 to do mill and overlay for you next year.
Yeah, I mean, whatever we wish to do, yeah, that's,
Okay. I think it's a good thing.
like I said, I simply just budgeted this identical to what we did last year, but reflecting current pricing, I guess.
Just in the budget for in the transportation utility, we have 256,000 budgeted for mill and overlay. So maybe the 150 plus the 128 that he has in his budget. So I think that reflects, because I think based on your numbers, it's like 128 is what we normally did, and then we add the 150 or to that.
Yeah, it should have been about 100,000 the last 2 years.
Yeah. So basically what it is that we have a 256,000 budget and transportation utility for mill and overlay, which is funded by 150,000 from the transportation utility, and then the residual from what we normally budget. Right.
So I guess my question is, are we gonna fund this at a level that we continue to do the amount that we've done, or are we gonna set a dollar amount? Because I think you said it, we've lost a pretty good chunk of work because of cost of materials. So, and I don't know that question was ever answered when we laid this out.
We're doing by dollars, so how about, so 150 and whatever is budgeted through the levy, then whatever you get done in that dollar amount.
So we're gonna
Or
stick with
close to it.
$100,000 in the budget, and then whatever we get out of the transportation utility.
And then hopefully, yeah, the goal is to be able to get more mill and overlaying done based on a dollar amount versus a distance.
Okay.
unless you want to allocate more money to a mill and overlay outside the budget.
Well, I guess I just wonder if, and I don't think anybody when we were doing this could have predicted that these materials were gonna go to what they are, but I thought the goal is to expand that program, get caught up a little bit, and, how much did you say the increase was, Paul, for the budget?
It's roughly 28%, 128,000.
So to maintain that level of, whatever, I get it, we're gonna get ahead a little bit with the transportation utility, but not gonna get ahead as far as we would have. I don't know if that's something we're gonna have to discuss going forward, or if this was a set dollar amount.
Also, just, I think, when we established the degradation fee, we kind of discussed that those,
Irrigation.
what?
Degradation.
Degradation fees? That we're going to use that to kind of put it back into the mill and overlay program. So we have the transportation utility fee, funding a portion of it, tax levy, and also those fees.
So in that $256,000, it's transportation utility budgeted and the degradation fees. That's where that 256 comes from? Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions on street repair and maintenance? Okay. Next item then is snow and ice. Again, going through this here after we had met with the mayor and Tim and Alderperson Zacher, I think last year, and Tim and I have to circle back on this, there's an increase of $25,000 in labor, and I'm actually showing our labor matching, but I think last year, one of the things that Tim does is just kind of goes through and checks labor to make sure that, that I don't make any errors. And, cause I'm showing that last year I budgeted $113,000 in labor, so I think that maybe what happened is I made an error last year and I didn't change it in my spreadsheets, so, I may have made the same error again, so it's just something that I gotta circle back on there. But otherwise, again, you're seeing the equipment being up, and then our materials, because of the lack of winter from our normal winter of last year, I think it's 2 years now, we've started with a different vendor of supplying us sand, because he was able to supply it to a screen cheaper than what we were able to screen it. And so we have, number one, we have about 100 yards of sand left over from last year that we have either in our salt shed or other people's salt shed that we're able to use again this year. So that's 100 yards that we don't have to buy again this year. So that's where the cost savings is there. The brush and weed control is pretty much identical from previous years. The street signs and marking, you'll see a $30,000 increase there in materials. What that is this year was the first year that we have done the memorial walk for the veterans. And so that banner is a 5-foot banner compared to our standard 36-inch banner, I believe, might be 48. But rather than going through and moving the brackets up and down, twice, 2 or 3 times a year, we're looking at replacing the banners on West Grand Avenue. And then also with the veterans banners being up for the duration that they are, the current sign poles do not have flag brackets on them. So we're looking at purchasing flag brackets so that for the 4th of July and Memorial Day and Labor Day, we can have flags, American flags during those holidays. We're also with this Jackson Street project, there is flag brackets and banner brackets that are also on those. And so it's some material that has not been, or that has to be added to that. So that's pretty much the the entire plus probably the increase there on the street signs and markings. Garbage collection is what it is. The only thing that may be eye-opening to you is the decrease in the landfill contract. In 2022, we were negotiating a contract with Waste Management, and I misinterpreted what Waste Management had said. They currently charge us $47 a ton plus a compliance fee of $13 a ton, and I took it that they were going to be charging us $60 a ton plus the compliance fee. So that net savings of $69,000 is simply my misinterpretation of what we were negotiating in the contract. I guess moving to page 100, like I say, everything else is just budgeted the same. Recycling is there is no increase requested for tipping fees or anything like that. So it simply just reflects the increase in wages. The composting site, we currently hire a temporary service or temporary agency to staff our compost sites. We were currently paying $9 an hour plus, their fees associated with that. About 1 week into the compost season, their gatekeeper quit on them and they were not able to hire anybody else. So for a good portion of the season, we had our own seasonal employees out there at the gate site. We're also having issues getting full staff with seasonal employees. So through the off season, we're going to, look at possibly different temporary agencies, whether we hire a seasonal employee ourselves. The hardest part there is our compost sites run past the summer season, so the college students go away. So that may not be feasible. We do have the capability of having LTEs employees, which are, typically adults that work for us for 1,000 hours. So we may be able to cross that road and get someone, but I'm just showing in our budget here of a pay increase from $9 to $14 an hour, and that just reflects what their overhead fee is. But we are going to try to exhaust some other options before we get to that point. Then the contracted services for a lot of years, the city of Wisconsin Rapids had a local vendor that was out of Wisconsin Rapids that ground our brush and stumps and things like that. Probably 4 or 5 years ago, he sold to another contractor from central Wisconsin. And even though with the mill closing, they were able to honor the fact that they came to Wisconsin Rapids and ground our brush for free. This year, because of the fuel prices, was the first time they charged us to grind our brush and stumps, and that was at a tune of $5,000 a time. They're, again, doing everything that they can to maintain their costs. They appreciate our work, but now with the closing of the craft mill, they have to haul it up to Rothschild, and they use it for biofuel up there. And that's a game that goes on and again, off again, because of what the natural gas prices are and things like that. So that's what that contract price reflects, is just the possibility of us getting charged again next year to grind our brush. So that pretty much takes care of all of our maintenance activities. We then, page 101, those of you that have been part of the Finance and Property Committee know that we have a 5-year equipment replacement plan, and these items here are just items that that we're looking to replace in 2023. And again, a lot of this stuff is anywhere from 18 to 24 months away before we can even see it, if we get a chance to see it at all, you know, so. But we're looking at replacing a 22-year-old tractor backhoe, looking at a couple different options there, whether it be we replace it with a tractor backhoe again, or a rubber track machine, that we can use both out on the road for doing maintenance activities and on our construction project. We have a 19-year-old street sweeper that has 14,000 hours on it. That is kind of our spare sweeper right now. And in that lifespan of that 19 years, we've gone through and rebuilt the cab in some of those areas. Well, those areas that we have rebuilt are starting to fail again. And so we would simply take one of the other sweepers that are either, I believe the next oldest one is 8 or 9 years old. And we would simply take that one and make that our spare that gets used once a month for a week, and then purchase a different one to put into service. Then we have a truck down at our sign shop that's 15 years old that has 107,000 miles on it. We're looking to replace that truck, but we don't necessarily know what we're looking at replacing it with, because down further you'll see that we're looking at replacing our centerline machine that was put into service in 1991 with a centerline machine that would slide into either the back of a pickup truck or kind of act like a trailer, but we have to go and look at that before we do that. So depending upon what we purchase, it may have to be a 3/4 ton pickup truck versus a 1/2 ton, but that price above reflects that. Same thing, looking at replacing 2007 1-ton truck that has been moved out of its normal fleet into being our brush truck, which is extremely dusty, and you know, so that truck, there's starting to be body panel failures and even some rust jacking and things like that on the frame. The other one is a 2003 for the Parks Department that has well over 100,000 miles on it. We kept that probably 3 years because we used to use a minivan for the seasonal employees to drive around in, but it's not the best idea to have seasonal employees having gas cans in the back of the minivan and stuff like that, so we just kept this older 1-ton. We use it in just the summer months. It comes off the road in the wintertime, but at least the gas can and things like that are not in the box or in the cab with them. We're also looking at getting into the business of pre-treating our bridges and our highways. This would be a small investment, and we would put it on a 1.5 ton truck. Again, like I say, we're one of the only municipalities in central Wisconsin that doesn't pre-treat, and we could, by pre-treating, we could come up with a cost savings, because we would, you know, like this weekend on Saturday, the air temperatures got below freezing, and the moisture that we got on Friday, we had to go out and salt the bridge decks, you know, where if we had this pre-treating system, we could have gone out during the rain and pre-treated it and possibly gotten away without having to call, you know, a truck driver in, pay call time, and then that time associated with that. The last thing then is to purchase a 50-ton four-post lift, so our mechanics, you know, when it goes to changing the oils on our dump trucks and our garbage trucks and things like that, we can lift the truck up into the air. Guys don't have to crawl underneath it on the ground and things like that. So that's coming out of our equipment replacement fund. I feel strongly about that because it's putting our guys in a better situation and not underneath a wet truck. So, and that's all that I have, unless there's other questions.
Patrick?
Going back to page 100, and your monthly brush pickup as well as your spring and fall pickup. Could you kind of go through the process of how that happens? You don't have somebody like driving around looking for brush or anything like that, do you?
So our monthly brush pickup, we do it that way. Would typically, so that starts, I believe, in April and goes through November, where we provide our monthly pickup on the last full week of the month. Currently, that's how we do it. The yard waste pickup, this is our second year on it, and it's not as successful as I'd like it to be to go with the brush pickup that way. But for our yard waste pickup, we do require residents to call in, and we probably, so when they call in, we put it in the iPad, the guys then take the iPad and go right to those locations. They probably pick up another 30% as they're driving through, just because we know what's gonna happen. We're gonna end up going back and picking it up. We just actually, was that 2 weeks ago, Mayor? Somebody called in because they've been driving past the leaf bags for 2 or 3 months on I believe it was Lincoln Street or something, and we went, because they didn't call it in the first time, so we didn't pick it up. So it is something that I would like to go to, yes. But our brush pickup is, it's bad in the spring and then gets bad right now, but in June and July, we don't spend too much time on it, maybe a week with a two-person crew, but in the spring of the year, it's probably a week with two-person crews.
Seeing as how you have the garbage truck that stops at every residence, I mean, isn't there some kind of program that they could have that, where they could just hit a button and it says, this guy here has brush to pick up, then you're saving on somebody driving around the city to look for brush. I mean, they're already out there. Why not utilize them?
That's a very good idea, Patrick. The only thing is some of that brush may be put out on Saturday or Sunday, so if they went through, depending upon their garbage collection day, they could have gone through, the brush could have been put out after it, so then we miss it or something like that. But no, we can definitely investigate something. Like I said, we're relatively successful with the leaf pickup, but it's getting people trained on how they did it for the last 20 years that it's going to take time to get people to that. But I totally would be worth trying it, yes.
I know you guys use the C-Click fix it as well, right? The garbage truck drivers and the recycler drivers, when they find an error in there. I was just wondering, the same principle as Patrick was saying, I mean, if they could, because I know they post stuff in there when there's violations in that, if they could use that and, somehow put in, brush pickup or something like that where, because you guys check that as well, so
Right.
just an idea.
Right, no, I agree. One of the issues is that Mondays and Tuesdays, each driver is picking up about 900 stops. And Mondays and Tuesdays are probably maybe 30 minutes of time at the end of the day that they have. Obviously, Wednesdays and Thursdays are smaller days. And so, like I say, I think that's a great idea, and we can try it and see. Sometimes people don't necessarily put, if you have a corner lot, there's people that put it on the side road that they might not see, so it's definitely something that we can try to do.
If there was one place that you could cut or would like to cut or could see cutting, do you have any room in your budget? Like if you had to cut, say, $250,000 out of it, do you have 250, like a couple line items that would equal that?
Well, as I said, I believe at the first committee of the whole prior to the budget starting, it would be extremely hard for us to cut, because if you cut something from us, that means people would go away, you know, and, because if you cut the compost site, there's still labor that we have associated with the compost site that we would have to put someplace else unless we were gonna get rid of someone. My work group has been in the last 6 or 7 years, not so much, because we have started to be able to educate and say what we do and things like that. But prior to that, our work group has been the place where all of the funding has come to make up these shortfalls. So, you know, and I don't take this personally, you know, when Alderperson Evenson says our roads are bad and everything like that, but they're not perfect. But they're not perfect because we don't have enough staff to maintain them, you know? So, I really don't think we have an ounce to be able to cut. Like I said, I have been doing this budget for, I believe, 5 years, and except for adding the mill and fill program to it, that's really all we've ever changed. We've increased our chip sealing over a time period to get it to where it needs to be, but otherwise, you know, we haven't done much for increasing, you know. I think eventually, once we get things put in place where we're doing more preventative maintenance rather than reactive maintenance, you know, our catch basin maintenance through the stormwater utility is gonna get more cost effective, but we're just not there yet because we haven't made it through that cycle. But, you know, like I said, if you told me that we didn't do monthly brush pickup, we're still gonna have to we're gonna still have to do something else with that work group over time, so, I don't think I have it personally.
Out of your equipment list that you have here, you don't think that there is anything that we could hold off a year or two on?
Well, the equipment list, that is already money that's in savings. So every year, I'll take a stab at this, Tim, you might have to correct me, but every year our budget reflects $450,000 of equipment depreciation and rent. And then that pays for depreciation, fuel expenses and things like that, and then whatever is left in there, that goes into this equipment replacement fund that then funds that. There is some that there's a savings in because we haven't, you know, purchased things over the last 2 years or purchased it to that $450,000 level. And there's probably some things on this list that we might not even be able to do because of the fact that, you know, I talked to the salesperson in the spring of this year on this Pelican sweeper, that he said it was $175,000, so I just did a 10% increase. That's $235,000 a day. So more than likely that piece of equipment won't be getting replaced this year because our budget or our plan is that tight over a 5-year period.
If I may, Paul, I just want to say thank you. I mean, I know you do a good job trying to figure this all out, and I know the public works, streets is very important to the city, this infrastructure, we need this, and it has one of the biggest budgets, and I don't like it when everyone wants to try to cut off of this, because then you have to answer why we're not doing more roads with the amount that we have. One thing to remember as well is asking when we're gonna, you know, could this piece of equipment or something like that, go, you know, push it off, just like we keep talking, okay, it gets so bad, it's gonna cost more next year and so forth, as well as the materials and that. I don't see it coming down, but I just wanna say thank you.
right, so at the beginning of the meeting, I did hand out excerpts from of the budget documents specific to engineering. The front of that had a cover memo that I had provided to the mayor when I submitted the budget to him back in September. And I guess I'll walk through, I guess, each of these components. Certainly, if there's any questions, please interject at your convenience. So the budgets or subcomponents, I guess, under engineering, there's a, I guess, administrative component of it, along with curb and gutter maintenance, sidewalk maintenance, traffic control, primarily our traffic signals, that are all included under the overarching engineering budget. So initially here for the engineering administrative component, that includes wages, operating, contract payments for special projects, software licensing, training, education, those sorts of things. We're up about 2.5% from what was budgeted in 2022. There's a variety of items that have minor increases. There's a couple items with decreases, such as operating supplies and training and education. But the staffing level of our department, we've got 3 salaried employees, 5 technicians and 1 seasonal technician. You know, all of those positions are currently filled at this time. We are proposing to increase our software licensing for our CAD program due to the proficiency of using that software with a couple of the new hires that we've had recently to secure 1 additional seat there rather than the 5 that we had. In addition, and I'm not sure if the desk replacements are still included under the engineering budget request or not, but proposing to replace 2 desks, well, replace 1 desk and install 1 additional desk. Over the years, over the past 10 years or so, all of the offices have slowly been upgraded to new furniture. One of those, we have 1 remaining that we'd like to replace anyway. And then the other desk would be a new desk as part of a shift of administrative resources from the street department.
Hey, Joe.
Yes.
Just so the council knows that desk replacements there's a outlay account in City Hall that money's put into there, so basically it's being saved up for desk replacements. So the money's there, it's just would be allocated out of that outlay account.
Yeah, we have an office equipment replacement fund, and then when various departments request stuff that would meet the criteria for coming out of that fund, I tend to leave it in their budget, but when it comes to funding out of the budget, it's coming out of that fund and not out of the tax levy or adding to the budget.
Thank you for that clarification. Moving on to equipment replacement fund. The engineering department has a separate engineering equipment replacement fund. In 2020, that's where we would replace all of our survey equipment, total station, GPS unit, those sorts of things. In addition, it would fund the replacement of the plotters that we have. That's what we're proposing in 2023, is to replace the 2 plotters that we currently have. One is for scanning in black and white, and the other is for color plotting. We'd proposing to replace both of those units with one unit that will do black and white scanning and color altogether. $9,000 is set aside annually to fund that equipment for the engineering department, and there's ample funds set aside at this time. Curb and gutter maintenance. Both curb and gutter maintenance and sidewalk maintenance, they're largely driven by available dollars. But we do inspect the work throughout the construction season prior to the next year's worth of work. And then we'll go through in the spring as well to validate and verify things. But the curb and gutter maintenance is up 5% from 2022. It's about 1,200 lineal feet of curb and gutter that's replaced in any given year. And we've got a couple areas that are proposed to be worked in the next construction season. In addition, I'll point out that not only does that budget include time for engineering, administration, and oversight of those activities, securing the contractor and doing the inspection activities and pay requests, but then also it covers street department staff time for traffic control and restoration activities behind the curb and gutter, as well as contractor fees for performing that work. Sidewalk maintenance, very similar to the curb and gutter maintenance as far as how it's structured and the cost components of it. That's up 12% from 2022. Primarily, the reason for that increase is to increase the amount of joint cutting that's performed. And so with sidewalk maintenance, there's two primary maintenance components. One is a direct removal and replacement of the entire sidewalk panel, and the other is sidewalk joint cutting, which is essentially grinding of the trip hazards. We can, I guess, go through and make a larger quantity of the sidewalk safe for the traveling public. It's more cost effective to do the joint cutting if those joint faults between the panels are within a certain tolerance. And so that's proposed to cover about 530 or 430 joints of sidewalk cutting in 2023. Regarding traffic control, again, that largely covers our traffic signals. It also includes, so with the traffic signals, we have Water and Light do perform the maintenance for us to keep them operational and working. And so that's about $75,000 in service fees to have Water and Light do that task for us on an annual basis. In addition, we budget for a certain number of supplies and materials that, in addition to things that Water and Light would happen to have to replace because of knockdowns or just equipment failures. So we're proposing equipment upgrades for one intersection in general, controller, backplates, ped buttons, signage upgrades. From time to time, that equipment either fails or try to be proactive with it and replace those prior to them failing. In addition, it includes engineering staff time for traffic studies, traffic warrants, speed counts, and those various activities. We already covered the Stormwater Utility Administration. Yes. Sure.
Is that contract for the cutting, joint cutting, is that a contract, or does the street department do that, or is it a combination of?
It's a separate contract. They pretty much, so under sidewalk maintenance, we have two separate contracts. One's for a concrete contractor to do removal and replacements, and that's where the street department will assist with traffic control and restoration activities. And then the sidewalk joint cutting, it's a kind of a specialized maintenance activity. There's one contractor that we know of that's Safe Step is the name of the company, but they'll come through and they've got a little cart that they use, and they can cut the sidewalk versus grinding it. The street department in the past has used a grinder, but it leaves a rough rough surface that we can't necessarily get to a 12-to-1 max slope, which is the ADA slope for accessibility.
Thank you.
Patrick?
On these traffic controls, you kind of went a little quick. The waterworks and lighting service fees at $75,000. That is that waterworks and lighting pays us, or we're paying waterworks and lighting?
So we pay Waterworks and Lighting Commission to have, for that kind of, I guess, failure maintenance. So if there's a signal that's hit by a vehicle, they're responsible for coming in, equipping a new pole, getting it erected, getting it operational. If we have a controller that fails, they're responsible for coming in and getting a new controller set up and in place quickly. And so they're, I guess, 24-hour service that keeps things functioning.
So that's a contract that the city has with another.
Yep, that's right. Contracted service.
And then do they charge on top of that for the equipment?
So any failures that they have as part of their maintenance, yes, that equipment is included in their service fee. It's not just a lump sum fee. This is an estimated amount. They charge based upon essentially time and materials.
Tim?
Right, yeah, I mean, obviously, it's what Water and Light charges to maintain, but like if a signal gets knocked down, they do come in, repair it, they bill us, but then we also pursue the insurance company and we get reimbursement through that. But majority of it, that is for them to maintain timing issues, outage issues, changing out controls, and they also charge us they keep a inventory of parts, and they'll charge us for those, so they have those available, so when they need to go out and service one of our traffic signals, they have the parts.
Thanks.
Any other questions at this time? All right, so we already covered the Stormwater Utility Administration. I don't have any other items to add to that unless there's questions. And that concluded the engineering department budget. I guess switching gears a little bit, let's talk about the Public Works Construction Fund and the projects that are proposed in 2023 for reconstruction. We have approximately 1.2 miles of roadway reconstruction proposed in 2023. That's up a little bit from an ongoing average. It's just kind of a rule of thumb to see, if we're in the ballpark on the projects that we select. So the largest project that we have in 2023 is Oak Street from East Jackson Street to 16th Street. That's 11 blocks, or almost 7/10 of a mile. That's a full reconstruction, storm, sanitary, water, and of course the street. In addition, we're proposing to reconstruct 9th Street from Peach Street to Chestnut Street. That's almost a quarter mile. And then two smaller projects, Apricot Street, which includes Broadway Street to 11th Street, Apricot Street from Broadway to 11th Street, including one block of Broadway from Franklin to Apricot Street. And then included in that is a small section of water main and some storm sewer and a retaining wall along Apricot Street. In addition, Shorewood Terrace, towards the north city limits off of First Street North, it would be 700 feet of Shorewood Terrace would be reconstructed with water main, sanitary sewer, and storm sewer. So those are the 4 primary reconstruction projects. In addition, for our concrete pavement maintenance, I guess what we've proposed and recently had discussions about at Public Works a couple weeks ago was the West Riverview Expressway from Chase Street to West Grand Avenue, and what the, I guess, the path forward would look like with that project. In addition, we've got we'll do the contracting work for sewer line for the wastewater utility. And then we're rolling over the signal grant project that we were hoping to do in 2022 along the expressway at Chase, Grand, and High Street. We're two public bids in, proposing a third at this time. Hopefully we'll have a reasonable contract that's approved, so that work can happen in 2023. Otherwise, that's kind of a summary of the projects. I guess I can add that with the help of the IT department and Justin Connor with his GIS capabilities, we have moved the list, the 5-year Public Works Capital Improvement Plan projects onto a online dashboard. And so that's placed, you can access it off of the city's website under engineering. And so if you have a chance to check that out, it helps find out where these projects are and some of the details. It's largely replacing or augmenting the project summary sheets that are included in the budget packet.
Sherry?
Joe, if we, we're beginning the quiet zone issues with the rail. None of that funding is in here, right? If we were to change a lot of the controls and stuff like that to become able to do the quiet zone, that's not built in here as yet, right?
That's correct. It's not in the 2023 proposed budget, nor in the capital improvement plan at this point yet.
Patrick?
Okay, in your budget here, if there was any place that you could cut, or say that we said that you had to get rid of $245,000 somewhere. Do you see a place that we could cut? As far as the department goes, or would you rather cut off from like these construction projects that we?
Yeah, so I guess preempting that question a little bit here. The majority of the engineering department budget is tied to either maintenance or capital projects. And so I guess to come up with any sort of significant dollar amounts, it would essentially be a decision to, postpone one of those types of activities for a certain amount of time, either one year or however long that may be, either reducing the capital projects or the maintenance projects.
Is there a maintenance project that you would recommend that we could put off?
For the curb and gutter and sidewalk maintenance, everything's based upon need, so, and there's more need than there are dollars. So it's hard to say. It would have to be a decision that, out of necessity, that we just don't have the funds. We just need to postpone it for a period of time.
And is there a capital improvements project that you could see postponing?
That's pretty much the same answer as well. I guess if there's any debate on the matter, you know, although there's a need, the one that I'll mention is the concrete pavement patching on the West Review Expressway, simply because of the fact that it's a very difficult decision to make, because the level of repairs that we're proposing, although albeit the best value for the city, it does extend beyond the bounds of local responsibility, because it's a connecting highway. The DOT does have limitations there as far as what they'll fund, and so we kind of cross the bounds there a little bit, at least with the proposed repair option that we're providing.
So we're doing work on that this year, correct? Like I see that it's been blocked off. Is that part of the project for next year that's in here, or what's going on out there right now?
No, that's simply just to get us through the winter months. So what we're doing out there right now is we're repairing the partial depths that have failed. When partial depths fail, they start to crack, and they get to be anywhere from the size of softballs to volleyballs. And most of the time what happens is through the winter months, through the freeze-thaw cycle, those partial depths will just blow out of the ground, out of the pavement then. And so obviously then in, you know, January, February, March, you can't do any sort of permanent repair on it. You're just kind of, I guess, sticking a Band-Aid on a wound that requires a stitch. So we're simply going out there, removing the partial depths that have extremely failed. I believe that they're in that section from Chase Street to Grand, there was like 75 of them, and we're replacing that with hot mix asphalt. We waited until after the Public Works meeting just to kind of see what the feeling was from the Public Works meeting, and it was, you know, pretty much that we may more than likely not do that project next year. And so we went out there after that then and started to, you know, repair those partial depths that have failed already. Those repairs will probably last anywhere from 2 years to 5 years without having to do anything to it. But then again, you know, just in one lane of traffic, there's 30 partial depths that are left yet. You know, I checked that on Tuesday, I think it was. You know, so that being said, that those could start to fail in the next 5 years, 2 years, whatever, you know. And so that there'd be more of that have to be done. So the stuff that we're doing right now, Alderperson Zacher and I had a conversation Friday evening. You know, we probably stuck $20,000 into that here in the last 2 weeks to get us through. But that being said, in the spring month, we could be out there every other day with a cold patch truck, you know, and probably spend 1.5 times that in the spring of the year. And, you know, you have the frustration of the traveling public, you have the frustration of our staff, because it's like we're not accomplishing anything. So, like I said, we waited until after the Public Works meeting to see kind of what the feel was for this project, and simply did that because we kind of know where the writing is on the wall here with that project in itself, so.
Now, on the Washington and is it all right if I talk? You're giving me that. Okay. The Apricot, I'm sorry, not Washington, the Broadway and Apricot Street. There was some bubbling of water coming up out of the ground over there, and you guys had, we approved some core drilling and stuff. Was the source of that ever determined?
The direct source is, as far as we can tell, is all groundwater related. So, I mean, when the street was originally built, and I don't know if it was can't remember the age of the street, but the last time, I guess maybe, let's see here, back in the late 50s, 60s, there was under drain installed behind the curb and gutter, at least in part of the street. And that is still operational to some degree, but that additional water that's saturated the road structure over the last 50 years has, I guess, shortened its life, or at least brought us to this point where it's deteriorated the road surface to such a degree that we need to go in there and fix it, and at the same time, I guess, bolster the under drain system, make sure that we go another 50+ years on the next rebuild.
Okay, so that one would be one that you would recommend not changing anything to and continuing on as we had planned for the 2023.
Yeah, I guess with any of these, you know, for the council's information, you know, Apricot Street, Shorewood Terrace, you know, it's not an imminent failure. So, you know, if they get postponed a year, you know, they get postponed a year. Again, it's the kicking of the can situation. Eventually, it will need to be done, and that's just the nature of it. But
So you're recommending that it could go another year, is what you're saying, but it'd be best just to fix it.
yes, that's correct. I mean, we've got our 5-year CIP. This is the budget that we've proposed, and so yeah, it would be my recommendation based upon what we've proposed at this point that these are the projects that should be done in 2023.
Thank you.
Jay?
Mr. President, if I may.
You can go ahead.
Go ahead, Brian.
Can either Joe or Paul touch on connector highways and how much the state provides a year for maintenance within city limits?
Yeah, so the connecting highway aids that we get each year from the state is approximately $320,000.
And how many, just roughly, how many miles of connecting highway do we have within the city? Can you ballpark that?
Yes, I should have that value. Paul, do you recall that offhand? I believe it's, I had this a week ago, but we have 150 miles of roadway, local jurisdiction. I believe it's about 50 for connecting highways.
And those would cover, you know, obviously Highway 54, Highway 13, Highway 73. Any others that I'm missing?
No, I think that captures it. Highway 34, which is also 13.
So I just want to make this clear to everyone. You know, we're getting $300,000 a year from the state to maintain connecting highways. And on this budget proposal, we have a project with a cost of $666,000 to replace a section of connecting highway, which is part of the state's responsibility to maintain as well. We're looking at a roadway that what is 40, 50 years old, guys, Paul or Joe?
Yeah, the expressway on the west side was built in 1976, according to our A drawings. And the expressway on the east side was built in 79, is what I found.
Okay. And if you've paid attention to some of the construction projects the state has put on throughout the years, And it's not uncommon to see roadways that are replaced within 20 years. So I understand the state is giving us $300,000 a year, but you know that's a Band-Aid on a bullet hole, if you will. And I feel like if we agree to this project, we're going down a pretty slippery slope to where we're going to commit to these projects and fund them on a city level. And I think that, you know, the state could look at that and be like, well, maybe 8th Street isn't an emergency anymore because maybe we let the city try to figure it out themselves. You know, and to me, this should be a joint effort. We should not be taking the brunt of this like we are in this proposal. And I am strongly against performing this project for 2023. That's all I have.
Go ahead, Paul.
Ryan, just to add to yours, comment there, engineering typically budgets $200,000 a year for, concrete patch replacement that's done by the contractor. And then in our budget, we have $26,000, budget anywhere from 25 to 35,000 to do concrete patch blow-ups. So of that 300,000, we're using 2/3 of it, you know, in our maintenance activities on an annual basis.
Thank you.
And I did find the value of connecting highways for the amount of mileage that we have. It's roughly 37 lane miles for connecting highways in the city.
Jay?
So I think Ryan hit the nail right on the head. I think these are the state's responsibilities to maintain and upgrade these projects, and I believe we are opening a can of worms. I would support a couple $100 for a sign out there that says, call your state legislature if you're not happy with the condition of these roads. They belong to the state. Let them fix them. I get it. We're doing a lot of maintenance and spending a lot of time out there, but in the end, what's going to happen if we start this now? Are we going to continue this right down 8th Street and all the way out on the expressway? So I think this would be, in my mind, an easy project to pull. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree too. I think we're just sending a message to the state that says, hey, if we wait long enough, the cities will figure out how to do it. And this is their responsibility. And I agree, a sign, maybe a resolution from council, you know, this is their responsibility. And we've done what, you know, engineering and public works has done everything in their power to maintain it, keep it alive as long as possible. And there is no additional CPR that we can do to help save this. And it's on the state. It's not on the residents of City of Wisconsin Rapids. They're already paying tax dollars to the state that should be going towards these projects. Thank you.
Matt?
Just wanted to say, after we talked last week on it, and for what is going on there, the job that you guys did is a great job, and it gets us through. I'm a little more sensitive now than I probably was in the past when people would, pick on the roads. Now that we're all part of it together, like, I get a little ticked off when people start talking about, those roads and those roads specifically. But at the same time, now I'm kind of empowered and happy to be able to give them more of an education than I would have ever had before in terms of why they're like that and how they got to that point. But at the same time saying, look what they did to bring it together for a few more years until the state can get their act together. So I'm just expressing my appreciation and better understanding of what's going on in the city. Thank you.
Sherry?
Thank you. On a rough estimate, I know we've talked about this before, but how much money do we spend fixing that specific area? Are we spending $50,000 every 2 years? I mean, what have we spent on it already out of our money? Do you guys have any idea?
Well, in the time period that I've been here, which is 2008, I think. This is going to be the third time, if we were to go out there to do concrete patches. This would be the third time that we've been out on that segment. You know, we've traditionally started at West Grand and worked our way to 16th Street, and then we haven't had to do much on Highway 54 in years past, because that was built in like 96, 98, 99, you know, a 3-year life cycle. And that was part of the reason, you know, we were getting such a supposed good score on A Street that they wouldn't numerate a project, so we've limited the maintenance on A Street to blow-ups, you know, and bad sections of roadway, just because that was built, I think, in kind of the same time period, 72 to 80 or whatever, you know. And actually, when we get a project numerated by the DOT, they're actually gonna start on the newest section of A Street instead of the oldest, you know, starting on the south end of town and working their way to the north, so,
Why is that? I'm not trying to interrupt.
I wasn't part of those discussions, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how that initial project got identified. It is currently under contract with the DOT for 2028 construction. I'm guessing largely based upon their other decision-making, they use what they call pavement condition index as a gauge to, you know, what the condition is. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is a local perspective. I know the Director of Public Works at the time had some discussions, and then, you know, they're also subject to their own desires and political decisions as well.
So I guess, oh, sorry. So I guess what my question before I was getting at is how much money are we spending of taxpayers' money fixing this, and then it just wrecks, and we fix it and it wrecks, and it fixes and it wrecks? I mean, is this something that we could have fixed one time, been done, no, okay.
No, that, like, it's, concrete pavement traditionally, the life cycle is 40 years. So if it was built in 76, we're looking at 46 years old right now.
And then on A Street, when the state paid for A Street, what have they paid for since on A Street? I mean, because wasn't it in the past that we were on the list to do it, and then it was okay, and then we didn't get funding? I mean, are we 100% certain that we are going to get the funding for A Street in 2028, 2030?
The 2028 section, that's already under agreement between the state and the city, so that's already signed. The possible project in 2030 and then a subsequent one thereafter, the DOT's verbally committed to 2 more projects. I guess the thought, at least at the time, was to continue on A Street and get up to the expressway with those 2 additional projects. But those are, like I said, just verbal at this point. We don't have an agreement signed between both entities to solidify that. So they're 2 possible future projects beyond 2028.
Right, so I just want everyone to be clear. So there's only one section of A Street that is going to be, that is already committed to for 2028.
Correct.
They're saying there could be possibly a couple more projects, but that would be it. Hopefully that would get us all of A Street. So everyone thinking that this $666,000 project from Chase and the expressway that the state's gonna pay for someday within 2030 is not going to happen if we want to have all of A Street done. So kicking the can down the road saying yes, I mean, and I get it, yes, why should we be paying for it? It is a state highway, the state should be. But guess what? What are you gonna do about it? There's nothing you can do about it. I mean, you call your legislators, yes, whatever. How has that gotten us on A Street in the last 40 years, 30 years? Nothing. So just remember that, you know, if we're hoping that we can get all of A Street done, these projects like this aren't going to be done. So we'll be keep limping these along, paying this money for another 20, 30 years. So that's just the point I guess I was trying to make, if that's correct.
Your Honor?
I was just gonna add, Sherry, to, I was part of discussions with the state, and I specifically asked, why are you doing Whit Rock to the south versus
Yeah.
the older thing? And it came down to index, that pavement indexing rating that shows that that pavement is worse than what's to the north of it. Obviously, I'm not an engineer and I didn't agree with it, but it came down to that. And then also, the money that's being spent into these concrete repairs, that's that connecting highway funds, correct? That we get from the state to use for repairs, or is that city levied taxpayer dollars?
We get, approximately 317,000 from the state for connecting highway aids. And that is to reimburse the city for the maintenance of those designated routes and traffic control. And the maintenance could be, obviously the concrete pavement patching, when we go and go back and fill potholes and crack sealing, obviously, snow removal. There's all kinds of maintenance that goes in to maintain those, plus, the traffic control element.
I just wanted to point out that we are getting money from the state to do those activities versus just always straight taxpayer dollars.
Patrick?
Just would like to go back to what Matt had said, and actually just last week I had driven past here and we had, I can't remember if it was 3 or 4 city employees out there that were all moving. They were doing a really good job. I think that's what the citizens see, like your department, as well as the police and but they visually see while driving what you guys are doing, and I think it's great to see that you guys are, I don't know what you're feeding them, Wheaties in the morning or whatever, but they're doing a good job. I just had a question about this. So this is something that obviously it didn't pop up last week. It's gone through the process of Public Works. It's been to the Common Council and it's been approved. This project. Oh, so this is a brand new project for next year? That was my question, is how old was this?
So it isn't anything new. I guess it's an expansion to our normal concrete pavement maintenance activities. Typically we would budget about 200,000 either for concrete pavement patching and or concrete pavement joint sealing, pretty much all on connecting highways on an annual basis. So this particular project, it's been on the radar for a while, but there's been conversations with the DOT over the last 12 or 14 months to discuss the pavement condition index, the other A Street projects and the priorities and the possible funding that the DOT could, we were hoping to provide to maintaining it. So basically, and I guess if I can summarize real briefly, so on an annual basis, if we're looking at $200,000 every year, kind of pouring into the concrete pavement patching efforts on connecting highways primarily. We've got a few segments of concrete pavements that are not connecting highways, but dollar for dollar and efficiency and post conversations with the DOT, albeit it is a big hurdle to get over, jumping outside of the roles of responsibilities, and it's not an easy decision to make. But we want to make sure we got it before the council, because we're kind of at a crossroads with those activities at this point, knowing that at least verbally what the DOT's projecting out for funding capacity is that we'll be continuing to maintain that segment for at least 15 years unless other funding becomes available through the state.
So did it pass the Public Works?
Yes, it did, I believe. There's a lot of debate.
And just one question for Tim. You said that the state paid for traffic control. Is that on top of the 135,000?
No, the 317 is to reimburse municipalities for the maintenance of connecting highways. That includes traffic control.
So that would go towards this 135,000, or is it on top of the 135,000 that we have budgeted here?
Well, I mean, it's, the 317 is budgeted as a general fund revenue to offset the tax levy for those. So,
Thanks.
Sherry?
Thank you. I just like I said, it's gonna be tomorrow night. It's in your packet, but if you could look through, I know Joe, put together, I think maybe both of you or just Joe put together that nice packet. It showed, you know, how much we're paying and the, you know, how much we can fix the road anymore. And I know Paul did a good explanation about, the tiny little cracks in there that don't adhere to anything anymore. And so that was very interesting. So if you haven't watched the meeting, before you vote tomorrow night, if you could look at that information, or I don't know if you want to expand on any of that briefly.
I can provide the presentation that I had. I'll send it out via email to all the council members. I think the audio in the recording was off for a while. So at least if you go back and watch Public Works, I don't know that it picked up the presentation, but it did? Okay, great.
Jay?
So again, I get the jurisdictions and I get the condition of the road, and you guys have done a good job keeping it going, but $666,000, you've got a 5-year plan put out. What aren't we gonna do if we do the work on a road that belongs to somebody else? I think this is the state's responsibility to maintain this, and we've got, I came down here on Jackson Street today. You get on that little section before the bridge down there, that's concrete, that's terrible. That whole stretch in there is terrible. And that belongs to us, I'm assuming. Yep, so I just think our projects need to be priorities, and the states should make some of their projects priorities. So, thank you.
Well, it's hard to ask the taxpayers to pay for it twice. I'm with you on that. Patrick?
Can we make any motions during this? We'll see if I get a second on this one, but I would like to make a motion to decrease the engineering department by $92,802. They can either, and what that is half of the curb and gutter and half of the sidewalk. And they can decide on if it all goes towards sidewalk or all towards curb and gutter and a little sidewalk or whatever. They can choose on their own line item.
Could you expand on that? I'm not following you.
Previously, I had asked if we could, if there was anything that he could see taking away, and he said, well, we could decrease the curb and gutter and the sidewalk.
I'll second it.
Joe?
And just to clarify I guess the statement on the cost reduction, as with anything, it's not because it's not without need. It's simply the pleasure of the council to be able to do that. There's certainly a need, but just wanted to clarify that.
So if we're cutting money out of the curb and gutter maintenance, that reduces wages. So is that going to affect any employee status? Because that will be a direct rough reflection on that, correct?
What was the dollar amount? 92,000?
$92,802. It's half of curb and gutter and half of sidewalk added together.
So it would largely just be reducing the quantity down to the extent to stay within that new dollar amount that's proposed. It's a smaller component of staff time. I guess I'm not entirely sure, what that quantifies as far as hours, but I don't believe that it would be significant in nature.
So is this, I guess, for the curb and gutter maintenance, is that when, like downtown along the curbs that you're replacing them in that? So if they're smashed, like when the street sweeper goes by and he notices them and you go out and you fix them, then they're just gonna stay that way?
Yeah, any curb heads that are missing. There was one down on East Grand that was replaced this year that was broken. And then, but largely it's in areas where the curb is no longer draining. It's either settled or heaved to such a degree that we get into a certain area and try to do as much maintenance as we can with the dollars that we have, and try to do that work in advance of chip sealing activities. That way if we go in there and do curb maintenance after chip sealing was just done, we're not having to do any repairs there to the surface.
And so if we have to, if it starts to fail, then we have to take it out of contingency because it's not in there, correct?
So there's, I guess as far as failure goes, I mean, like I said, there's definite need throughout the city. There's not a shortage of curb and gutter that is, I guess for lack of a better term, has failed. I mean, it's, yeah, if there's something that needs to be replaced that we don't have budgeted dollars for, then we'd have to look at other maintenance accounts and maybe shift between sidewalk or vice versa.
Go ahead, Matt.
I would recommend that any money that we did vote on that we could find go directly towards the new construction, street construction, if we choose to find money. And in the end, I know we're reallocating it, but that's what we're looking to do, is try to prevent as much debt as possible as we can start moving our way out of the debt.
Paul?
I will say that, removing that from curb and gutter maintenance, we've kind of started to, is it regionalize, is that the right term for it, our street maintenance? And so we try to go into an area that we're going to chip seal, for example, ahead of ourselves. And there's lots of times where we don't fix curb and gutter that's settled because of whether it be utility companies coming in and directional boring underneath the road or underneath the curb and gutter, and then years down the road that curb and gutter settles and then it no longer drains. When the curb and gutter quits draining, then our roadway surface starts to fail in that area. And so in my personal opinion, there's roads that we haven't done asphalt patches on because we can't get the curb and gutter patch because we don't have enough money in that section. But understanding, like I said, we would then be going in and not doing 100% of the maintenance in those areas because we can't get it done because there's not enough. That's contracted work. So just understanding that, I just wanted you to be aware that that's what's going to probably happen.
Patrick, I just want to be clear. So you just basically took the 110, 116, and the 75.
Could you turn your mic on? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Cheers.
I got it on. I'm just sitting about 10 feet from it. Sorry. So you took those two numbers from sidewalk and curb and maintenance, added them together and divided by 2. Okay, I just want to make sure I didn't hear the dollar amount you said.
Yeah, and he can decide on it. I mean, if curb and gutter is the more important one, he can decide on if it's gonna be sidewalk or curb and gutter or wherever else.
Any further discussion on that? So we have a motion. You want to reread the motion, Patrick? I'm sorry. Can you reread the motion?
Motion is to decrease engineering budget by $92,802. And they can decide on what line item it needs to go under.
Okay.
And those funds would go towards future road work.
And I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
No.
That's what I heard. Yep. Okay, the motion failed. Jay?
I'd like to make a motion to remove $666,902 out of the Public Works capital improvements budgets for the West Riverview Expressway.
Second.
I'll second that motion.
I beat you to it, Ryan. So Jay moved to remove the 667.
Just for clarification, correct me if I'm wrong, but we normally budget 200,000. The expressway project was 460,000. Correct.
In addition to the 200.
Right.
Yep.
So is that 200,000 in this?
Yep, it's an
Right.
expansion to
We
the
normally
annual.
budget around 200,000 for expressway or concrete pavement patching. I do believe the expressway project that we've been talking about is about 460,000 approximately.
Well, it's 667,000 for that project.
Okay.
But it shows up under the concrete pavement.
Okay, so that's the entire
Maintenance.
project.
That's the entire project.
So if we were to do this project,
Okay.
all that $200,000 that we set aside for concrete maintenance is in this. There would be no other concrete maintenance beyond this.
If you remove that project, we didn't propose an additional 200,000 separate from that.
I think I want to amend my,
Yeah.
amend my
The 400.
motion. Could I amend it to remove the West Riverview Expressway project minus the $200,000 that would normally go into the concrete repair budget? Is that clear?
Yes, I'll amend my second to that.
But just, so if you're saying it that way, is that committing that 250,000 or whatever to this road, the way that you're saying it
No,
made me think that?
I'd like it to go back into the maintenance fund, so if you have 8th Street, or 54, 34, 13, whatever the project may be, there's maintenance money there to do the concrete work. That's what that $200,000 in my mind should be set aside for. And it may be some that has to go into that section.
Is that in addition to the 320,000 that we get from the state for the contracting highway? I don't know if I'm confused if we're talking about the same thing.
So the project that we were proposing on the expressway in total was $667,000. I guess it sounds, I guess if I could summarize it, Jay's requesting to remove that project, remove the $667,000, but keep $200,000 that we would normally have budgeted for concrete pavement patching.
Sure, should that be two separate motions? I mean, I think I understand it, but I know what I'm trying to say, but I don't know that I'm making it clear. All right, so I'll amend my motion for the third time. Can we remove the Public Works project on West Riverview Expressway from Chase Street to West Grand Avenue? We'll make that simple.
I'll second that.
Question?
Matt?
Sorry, just so I understand too, like, when we were talking about this, we added that in. This is the 470,000 that we put on top of the 2 million already. That's what will just go away. The other money that was there is still gonna be there. That 470,000 that's what we were talking about taking out debt for that project, right?
No, that's not included in the debt issue. Because we've never used debt to fund the concrete pavement patching program. So that was, that's part of being funded by, is part of the deficit, not part of the borrowing.
Oh, so you're just saying the 470 was a deficit?
That's the tax levy deficit, that we have to lower the levy by $470,000 in order to get to, right. It's not.
And then on top of that, if we do the 2 million, then that's also a deficit. So then we got to lower the levy to get the 2 million plus the 470,000.
If it's the council's wishes not to borrow, yes, then you'd have to reduce it
Okay,
additional.
so right now, if we pass this motion, that 470 deficit just disappeared? Because the other money for that road
Right.
was, yeah.
Yeah.
So the other money for the, above and beyond the 470,000, that was part of the levy still. That was, because you're saying that was in
Right.
the levy, yeah.
Right, yeah.
So that's not part of the state 330, okay, it's two separate things. Okay.
You clear on all that out there, Ryan?
No, I'm with you.
Okay.
Regardless, it's a savings. If we cut the project, it's a savings of 470,000. It's just how you want to look at it.
Correct. So we have a motion to remove that project and a second. Any further discussion?
Can we do a roll call vote?
Pardon?
Roll call vote?
Yeah, we'll do a roll call vote. That's good. Roll call. Aye.
Aye.
I didn't know if you did Ryan first or.
Oh, Ryan, sorry. Yeah, I forgot. In district order.
Aye.
No.
Dennis? Patrick?
Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it.
Now, do I need to make a motion to put that $200,000 back in for concrete maintenance? If we wanted,
Yeah, right now you've removed the whole 600, and like I said, typically we budget about 200 and some thousand for annual concrete pavement patching.
all right, I'd like to make a motion to put $200,000 back into the concrete maintenance budget.
Is it exactly $200,000?
Last year was 235, but historically it's right around that 200,000, depending on what the unit prices are. So I don't know what the exact figure would be based on quantities, but last year was 235,000.
Is it,
The contract amount last year was 200,000, but then we have some staff time, obviously, to manage that. That's figured in there.
was it $200,000 that was put into this project? Was it exactly $200,000?
Well, I'm just saying last year, on an annual basis, we budgeted about $200,000 of contract work for that concrete pavement patching. And then I think this year was that annual amount for whatever specified areas we did, it was all funneled into this project to the tune of $667,000. And I'm just making the point that annually, we budget $200,000 for concrete pavement patching.
So if this budget, if the project wouldn't have been considered, you would have put $200,000 in a line item on the budget.
Very near that. It does depend year by year on what we're proposing. For instance, recently we redid the approaches to the expressway at Wilson Street. And, you know, that project was a very finite project that we knew this is what we want accomplished at the end, and here's what the dollar amount is to get us there. or the budget that we need to get us to project completion. Now, I can say for this budget year, we were just going to do, we're going to pick an area, and we were going to do the necessary patches in that area up to a set dollar amount. And so, to the extent that we always know a finite quantity and finite budget amount, it does vary. But generally, on average, it's about 200,000 every year.
And this $200,000, does it come from the tax levy? So if we voted no, it would just lower the tax levy.
Matt, did you have something?
Yeah, so maybe I'm just confused. So the 330-ish that we get from the state to fix their roads every year, where is that money going for 2023?
It's budgeted as a general revenue, and that offsets our concrete pavement patching. It offsets the maintenance that we do on those connecting highways. Like I said, if we do joint sealing or pothole filling, I mean,
Right.
obviously Paul and Joe can speak more eloquently to the actual maintenance activities, but snow removal, salting, traffic control.
So that's not the 200 that we're talking about, though, or it could be.
Correct.
It's just
Correct. Yeah, well,
It
the
goes into-
317 is offsetting the tax levy, so it's a general, it's like our transportation aids. It's budgeted as a general revenue
Yeah.
that offsets the tax levy. So we have our maintenance expenditures over here, and we have our revenues over here. And those the transportation connecting highway aids are budgeted in the revenues that offset those maintenance expenses that lower
Okay.
the levy.
So it comes in and then it goes out.
Right.
Depends on the light item we put it under.
Correct.
Thank you.
Jay?
I think Paul wanted.
So for instance, in our maintenance activity budget, we budget on an annual basis somewhere between 25 and 50,000 to do concrete patches for when the concrete blows up in July. We do that in September. We also budget joint around $100,000 to $125,000 to go through, and the product is called Mastic. It's a rubberized crack filler that has aggregate in it, so that if a person were to drive a motorcycle down it, they won't get bent out of shape, driving down that crack. The engineering department typically budgets $200,000 plus or minus to do concrete patches on, wherever we can. And then obviously we have to plow the highways, salt the highways. I don't have that broken down into highways versus, our residential streets or whatever. So, I think what Tim is saying is that we probably on an annual basis budget or do close to $300,000 or more a year of maintenance. That simply is one of the revenue sources that pays for us to do that. The other stuff is the levy, degradation fees or whatever.
Was the work that we just did on the expressway, was that covered with the money from the state, roughly speaking, do we think? I know it's not cut and dry all the time, but was the 20?
I would say that it would be close. The only reason why I say that is because, we just did concrete patches on the expressway by Lincoln Street, and that was close to $200,000 worth of work there. We also did work with crack filling to get us so that we don't have a bunch of maintenance work down on A Street in front of Walmart in that 2026 or 2028 construction season. So that's kind of why we came up with that project is because, or identifying that project. Number one is mostly to start the conversation piece to say, hey, this thing is dead, and we still have to do maintenance on it. We need to start to have a conversation and show that it's not because we don't want to do maintenance on it, but we're sticking a lot of money into something that's dead, and we have to come up with a better solution with the taxpayers' dollars.
Well, okay, okay, so we put 20,000 into it, and it's gonna last 3 to 5 years, somewhere in there, is what I heard you say, right?
Yep.
It'll
what we
last-
did- what
it'll
we
last
did-
a
What we
while.
did should last 3 to 5 years and could go longer.
Yeah.
You know, without having, you know, there may have to be a time period around that 4 or 5 years, just based off experience. You know, last year, we were in there with a mill in front of Quick Trip, or 2 years ago, we were in there with a mill because the asphalt and concrete, moves at different rates, you know, and so what happens is it starts to move and it creates a bump, you know, so we may have to go in there in year 4 or year 5 and mill that off to get another time period off, or we remove the asphalt and do it all over again,
Okay.
you know, so.
But as far as I am understanding, the state money has paid for the repair of that for now, to give us some time to see what we can do.
Yep.
And the money they're giving us is helping us cobble this stuff together. That's kind of what they're giving us the money for, until we can completely rip out the whole thing, which is gonna happen anyway. So if we did put in this, if we blacktop this part of the expressway, they'd come, well, they're not gonna come in anytime soon, like Sherry said, but ultimately, when the state job does come through, it's gonna get ripped out again, right?
Yeah, if we were to go through and remove all the concrete pavement and put in blacktop like we were proposing with the 697,000, you would be looking at 15 to 20 years with limited to no maintenance activities on there.
Okay. All right, but okay, I think I got it, thank you.
Jay?
Just so Joe or Paul or Tim, it doesn't matter, but this $317,000 does not cover all the expenses of our maintenance that we do on the highways. This $200,000 will supplement some of that, plus probably give us some work on our own stuff, correct? Is that pretty fair?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Patrick?
If I'm understanding this right, so we just took out the $666,000, which is, so if we took that out completely without adding any back, we would be at the 1.7 overage, $1,728,159 over, correct?
Assuming that, yeah, with no debt issue?
Correct.
Yes.
But then, Jay, you want to add another $200,000 back into that. We're not going to lose this money from the state because it goes into the general fund. So I don't see why we'd add back $200,000.
Because again, and maybe Joe or Paul can do a better job explaining it than I can, but that money's not enough to cover all our expenses, correct? The state reimbursement?
That's correct, yeah, there's more need and resources used in a given calendar year than the 317,000.
And it's not just on state projects? Not necessarily?
For concrete pavement patching?
Yep.
That's right. I mean, we, like East Jackson, that's concrete pavement, that's not connecting highway. Also 8th Street North, that's concrete pavement, not connecting highway.
I'm all for adding money to the roads, but I think we should take it out of other departments and not taking out more debt for the roads.
Mr. President, if I may.
Yes, Ryan?
So, in the Public Works packet, there's a sheet that goes over the pavement conditions, right? And if you look at it, it shows that portion of highway that we're proposing to replace as maybe it says 95. So anywhere from 85 to 100 is good class. Okay? What is the deal with that? How can this road be rated as good in class, but we see it as an immediate need for replacement?
sorry.
So the chart that, that Mr. Austin is referencing, it's the pavement condition index that the DOT provided to us. The current, well, in 2020, the value that they have for the pavement condition between the Expressway Bridge and Grand Avenue was a 65, which was in the DOT's determination fair. Projected by 2026, they have a 55, which kind of falls between, right on the border between poor and fair. In consulting the PACER rating system, which we are obligated to provide our PACER ratings to the state, and that's what we use in all of our local roads. They also have one for concrete pavement. And both Paul and I consulted that manual, and it's a 1 to 10 score, and we feel it's between a 1 and a 2. So failed to poor, whatever the words that they use. Let's see here. A rating of a 1 or
Oh, yeah, my apologies, Joe. It looks like I was looking at the wrong column here. But regardless, it's not, according to this list, it's not the worst need that we have, right? I'm seeing 60s, some 54s, so, I mean, it's up there, but it's not top of the list, but yet we're choosing this area to go after it. Can you explain that, please?
Yeah, so I don't fully know the procedure that the DOT uses. I guess what they've described to us is that they pick sampling points, and they come back and sample those same points every 2 years. And so how they arrived at certain sampling points versus others, I'm not entirely sure. In addition, this segment rating is an average, or at least includes additional expressway work that we're not saying is something that needs rehabilitation to the degree that the section from Chase to Grand does. So there's some averaging that's occurring there that's increasing the reported pavement condition.
Mr. Mayor?
So I guess without this $200,000, or this $200,000 would have been put into the West Riverview Expressway project, you would have been $200,000 less to do concrete repair anywhere else. So I guess how important is the $200,000 in the long run?
Well, I guess under the presumption that was that's what we were proposing to invest the dollars into. Short of that project, there's ample need to invest it elsewhere as well. East Jackson Street probably wouldn't be the project at this point, and we continue to try to garner state funds for that as a possibility. But part of the presentation that I gave at Public Works is going over the life cycle of pavements, and the importance of hitting the time and the right maintenance treatment at that time. It's imperative to do the right level of maintenance at the right time to extend the pavement life the longest for the least amount of dollars. And the section that we did on State Trunk Highway 34 is kind of a case in point. We did a bunch of partial depth joint repairs on that section of highway, and when we were doing the repairs, the joints needed to be repaired. The benefit on the timing that we did that was that the existing concrete adjacent to those partial depth repairs, and it was even noted by the contractor that was grinding out those joints, that the rest of that concrete was in really good condition. It wasn't already deteriorated. There weren't microfractures expanding out beyond the joint. So we were tying into solid concrete. So we anticipate that those joints will be, receive the full life expectancy of that maintenance effort. Whereas had we waited another 5 or 10 years to do some of those joint repairs, the surrounding concrete may have become likely more decayed. So we're trying to tie into, decayed concrete that, yeah, I guess the main point here is that the timing and tying that to the right treatment method is imperative. So that's what we would propose to continue to use the $200,000 for, is to continue to make those maintenance choices to keep the city's overall cost in the long run to a minimum.
Your Honor?
But you were willing to forgo with that next year, though.
But it was in a section of connecting highway that we would normally have invested those funds in.
Okay. And then just to let you know, President, Bemke did make a motion, and so I'm assuming it maybe died from a lack of second, or?
Yeah, we were still in discussion, but I was gonna mention that there has
Okay.
been no second, yeah.
Okay.
I'll second to keep the 200,000 in for concrete pad.
So they do have a motion and a second then. Any further discussion? All in favor of leaving the 200,000? Oh, yeah, just do it, we'll do a, roll call again. Mr. Austin? I'm sorry.
Aye.
Aye. Nay?
Nay.
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
So, I'm sorry, what was that? Yeah, it was 4-3 aye. So the motion passed, it was 4-3 aye. Motion passes. We'll leave the 200 in, or put the 200 back in, I guess. Anything further? That pretty much wraps it up then, huh? Go ahead.
I just
Right.
want to thank, I think Sherry did it already, but Paul and Joe, as she pointed out, these are the largest budget. There's a lot of number crunching and a lot of square foot and different pricing for all the different aggregate. And I do want to thank you guys for the work you put in, because I know it is just listening to your presentations when you gave it to me, it's a big project. And it's a lot of your time, and I appreciate it, even though it's your job, but you guys do a really good job. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to echo those sentiments as well, and also, when Matt mentioned, the work out there, I actually stopped on, the other day, leaving the Y, and talked to those gents out there. They are doing a great job, and I agree with Patrick. It's great to see them out there, and we're lucky to have them, so appreciate that, and pass that along from us to them. I sure appreciate it. Anything else? I'm sorry, Sherry.
I just had a quick question. For the budget meeting on Wednesday, who was presenting at that,
I thought it was Thursday, isn't it?
or I'm sorry, Thursday, you're right. Right,
It's Thursday.
tomorrow's council, Wednesday off, and then Thursday another budget.
Yeah, I
So-
think it's,
Is it water and light and?
Yeah. So I think the other night I was sitting around thinking, wait a minute, we didn't do wastewater. So I wonder if I should go back to the poll that you responded to, choose another night, choose wastewater, and then have all the miscellaneous budgets like planning, HR, some of those that have those department heads here, just if you have any questions on any of those budgets. And we can kind of cover the rest of them that way.
And what night was that, Mayor?
It hasn't been chosen, because when I went through to see what we had in that email, we didn't choose a night to do wastewater. And so I thought, well, maybe we should add another committee of the whole night. have wastewater on there, and then we would have time to do the other kind of some miscellaneous budget, IT, planning, and HR kind of things, and do that on another night, so we catch all those. If you have any questions, I don't know if you need a formal presentation on the small ones, but they're here to answer any questions, should anybody have any questions.
So when did we put library in?
Um,
I thought you.
They're
said-
scheduled, library's scheduled too, so
I
let
thought
me look
those were
back.
the same day. We were talking doing wastewater and library in the
I
same day.
think it's water and light and library.
I'm sorry, water and light.
Let me check that
that's right.
email that we sent you. Yep. Yep. What's that? I'm just trying to find that email that was sent to council. So water and light this Thursday, and libraries next week, I think.
Parks and Rec isn't Parks and Rec Thursday?
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Water and light. Let me see if I can find the email that we sent you.
Well, just, and also I think it would just be kind of good to have another committee of the whole, just kind of, once we're done with discussions, to kind of wrap, the budget up and have that final discussion on, what we're gonna present to the public hearing.
I agree.
And when is that, Tim? November?
I think we need to determine that.
Okay.
I think that may be part of that fourth committee of the whole that the mayor's referring to. Also, I'm gonna, let's see. I'm sending you the water and light budget email right now. So, I don't know, I kinda got mixed up. I thought it was gonna be Monday, so
Okay.
I just, distributed that to you. So,
And that's, so Thursday is
Yep.
water and light
yep,
and
and library.
parks.
Isn't
I
library?
think library's next week.
And Monday is library and,
Oh, let me look here.
I can't find the
I
email.
thought Monday was gonna be library and everything else.
I thought so. Let me look here.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
oh yeah, there's library and ARPA discussion on Monday, I think.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh,
would there be time for the small budgets to come in with that, or is that gonna be too lengthy?
It might be okay, but we definitely we'll have to do another night for wastewater. Cause that's a little bit bigger. I don't know how we never even thought of that one.
good for Emily's email.
I know, it's,
October. Here it is. Yeah, so October 20th is Water and Light, Parks and Rec, and then October 24th is Library and ARPA.
and then I can go back to that email or that doodle poll that Emily sent out, and then I can find a date where everybody could make it, and we can do another one. I think, I'll see when that works, but outside of, probably after Halloween. I don't know if there's a time before that that's available. We won't do Halloween. Tim wants to go trick or treating. He's going as a finance director.
If Shane's gonna do that poll, and we're gonna meet again. If Shane's gonna do that doodle poodle, or whatever the heck that thing is.
Go check it.
I'm out of,
Check it. Do you wanna schedule,
can I Zoom if I'm out of town on the 2nd.
Yeah, I can go back and see when people are around, because you guys signed up on that
Yeah,
list.
it
And
didn't go out into November.
oh, okay.
well, I guess the question I have, Chairman Veneman, is do you wanna schedule that last one then right away too, as long as we've got this out there? We could schedule both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
What do you mean schedule?
Well, Tim suggested that we do,
Oh, yeah,
schedule both.
kind of wrap up.
And if that one's after Halloween, then I'd have to Zoom if it was those, I'm out of town those for myself.
We might be able
Would
to
it
do
be
it.
something that we want to do after the Finance Committee on the 1st of November? Because we have that,
I
kind of
think
like
you're
what we
gone,
did
right?
before.
Yeah.
So we could have Finance at 4 and then
I think
Committee of the
Dean,
Whole at 5?
Dean, you're gone on the first, correct?
Right.
Yeah, but I could Zoom.
Okay.
I don't know if that works, but, or we could have it that
Yeah.
that next Thursday, or
Yeah.
that Thursday after Finance, which would be the 4th.
Do you want to put those on the doodle poodle?
Yeah. Doodle poodle. I will have Emily assist us, so, we'll get that figured out tomorrow.
Thank you.
If you don't mind Zoom, I'll work it out.
Yep, nope, sounds good.
Oh, yeah, motion to adjourn then,
Second?
is that what you were saying? All in favor, say aye.
I.
Thank you, everybody.